All right, so good day and welcome to another edition of a Group of Hangout for Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias, and we're looking at the teacher sack as well as the competency of teachers in Nigeria. Just recently, we heard about the sack of about 21,000 teachers in Kaduna State, and that has brought a lot of furore, has raised a lot of debates in Nigeria and even abroad. But then joining us today to look at this matter, we have Madam Okore, who joins us from the United States. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we also have Habib Fajabi, who joins us from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Habib, thanks as well for joining us today on the program. All right, let me just start with you, Adamu. What do you make of the situation first and foremost?
Thank you for having me, Victor. It's always glad to be here again. My take on the issue, the teacher government issue in Kaduna State, I think is straightforward. I think the solution is not to fire these teachers. The solution is far away from that, actually. I'm not condoning bad teaching. I think if teachers cannot teach our children what we want them to teach them, they shouldn't teach. However, firing these teachers isn't the solution. Victor, the solution is to take away education and hand it over to us, to parents. That will not just solve the bad teacher issue, but it will solve everything that is wrong with our education today by taking education and handing it over to us. And so what do I mean by handing over to us, Victor? Because we are not in charge. Victor, I'm guessing you're not a parent yet. But our parents have no control of the system, zero control. We don't hire the teachers. We don't delegate somebody to hire for us. We don't pay them. And you can't change something you're not in control of, Victor. That is just doesn't happen. So that is why, so that's what I mean by taking back education and giving it to parents. That will ultimately solve the issue because now you are in charge. For example, Victor, let's say you want to mow your lawn. You want anything done. What do? You go and find someone to do it for you, right? You pay them and you can hire and fire them. Those two mechanisms solves everything. The person will work for you. And if not, you can easily fire that person and get someone. So if we're allowed to educate our children, I send my child to school and they are not getting the right education, or I feel the teachers aren't teaching them well, guess what I will do? I will remove my child from school. What will happen to the job of that teacher or to the school? The school will lose my business. And that would teach them how, then that will solve the problem because the school, they will try to find out what's wrong with the teachers. Either they will fire the teacher, hire another one, whatever they need to do, they have lost my service. But in public education, you have no choice. We don't even have choice. We have to send our children anyway because people are just poor. So that is my take. Take education, give it back to parents, let parents decide education.
All right, but we have the Parent Teachers Association. I mean, yeah, PTA, Parent Teachers Association, and we also have parents who hire teachers, as personal tutors to their kids at home. The issue of having every parent getting involved in the selection or the hiring of teachers by schools, don't you think that would be chaotic?
No, not at all, Victor. So, yes, there's Parent Teacher Association, but that's not it. So, like I've said, this is not just education. We need to do this with everything. So, for example, I'm going to differentiate the difference between the Parent Teacher Association that we have right now and what I mean by taking education and giving it to parents, giving it to people. The current situation right now, Victor, is people don't pay. Like I mean, we pay indirectly, but most of the money that our government used to pay for education is through, it's mostly through from comes from oil. So you see that disconnection. You don't really pay. I don't really pay. So that is one. Two, the way education is, even if, like, I do not support government education, Victor. I do not. So it's a little bit different. But even if I do, if you would convince me to support public education, this is what you need me to do. Give me the responsibility and let me and you, Victor, decide. Hey, Victor, come. We live in the same town. Let's pay a little taxes. Let's tax ourselves, build school, delegate someone to hire these teachers. So you see the difference, Victor? We delegate someone to manage the schools. We build the schools with our money. We hire the school with the teachers with our money. If these teachers aren't teaching our students well, guess what would happen? We have the power right there, right on, to change them immediately. And if in town A, we like our teachers, town B might not like their teachers, so we don't affect them. They can do whatever they want. So that is localization of education. But in Kaduna State, it's like one person deciding everywhere in Kaduna State. So, but in either case, Victor, so that's what I mean by the difference between teacher education. Let you and I, Victor and I, decide where to build our school, who to hire. Who to hire, and then if the teachers are bad, we can sack them. So that is the difference between the current system and what I'm referring to.
All right, very well. I'll come back to you in just a bit. Let's get to hear from Habib. Habib, you just heard Adamu now talking about what he thinks could be the solution to this problem we're facing at the moment. How justifiable, in your thinking or estimation, do you think this sacking is?
Yeah, thank you for having me today. Good afternoon. I think what the governor of Kaduna State has done by sacking them is not right, because this is going to increase the population unemployment in the state. So, but I think the first step is right, because we have to keep this teacher out of the school. They can't continue to be in the class to teach the student, because from what we saw from the result of their competency test, it shows that they are not competent enough to be in the class. So keeping them out of the class for now is the best thing to do. From there on, the governor can now look at another alternative for them to improve their teaching skills, to help them also get back to class. But taking them out of the class is very right, because I think the problem starts from their own place also, because I think they also pass through the same process, the same bad process. That's why they are able to find themselves in this kind of situation. That's why they are unable to teach, pass the message to the new students. They also pass through these same challenges. If we keep them in class, that is, we are even producing more and more bad students. So the best thing is for us to keep them out of the class. So the government can now look at another alternative for him to improve them, maybe enrolling them in a program, not even going back to school again. There's a program to improve teacher competency, to improve teacher skills. So they can organize this program. This program can help them develop their teaching skills. But keeping them out of the class is best thing, because we cannot continue saying this is sacking them is bad, because if we keep them in class, this thing keep increasing. They keep passing wrong message across to the new set of generations, and this trend is going to continue, and it's very bad for our country. And again, I think we have to talk about these PTA meetings. There's always teachers and parent association meeting whereby the parents come to school, have a discussion with the teachers. The teachers talk about the improvement of their wards, how they improve, and they also see the school facilities. So I think all these things, we need to bring it back. This will really help our educational system. if we all left that, oh, we already send our kids to school. It's left for the. Hello?
Please go ahead.
Okay, we can't just say we already send our kids to school, that they are in school. It's left for teachers to nurture them. We have to even get involved. We must get involved with these teachers. Know what, because if we have this teachers association, there's like this relationship within the teachers and the parents. The teachers can express themselves that this school, we are lacking some things. If we can help us organize like a bit of contributions to fund the school in this aspect or the other. And also our educational ministry. Before, when I was still in secondary school, there was this external invigilators that always come to school unexpectedly. All these things all these things needs to come back to the school system. All external invigilators need to come check on a routine basis the school facilities, the teachers. So if we have these things on track, it will give the teachers, they'll be able to step up their games, they'll be able to step up their teaching skills, they'll be able to express themselves to the ministry that we are lacking this thing, we need this thing in our school. This thing is not helping us. You need to remove this rot that we are experiencing. We need this new advanced technology to improve our skills. So all this thing, our educational system is going down because we are not stepping up. We just leave it the way it is since inception. We need to step up our educational skill. But for now, I think taking the teachers out of the school is the best thing. The teachers cannot continue being in class because we continue passing the same wrong message to these children. Because even with what we see in the result sheet of these teachers, their handwritings, everything about them was very bad. So they need to be out of the school, and later we can look into them, how to improve them, get back to their job, get back their job. Because if we send all of them out, 21 number, it will keep increasing. So for now, it's best thing for us to keep them out of the school. But our educational ministry, both at the federal level, at the state level, needs to come together, sit down, and look at the way forward to
all right. You spoke about these people being kicked out and then the place being empty. Are you aware that the government is preparing to hire another 25,000?
a new recruitment process, right?
Yes, please. There's about 25,000 that will be employed.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing for now, because this new recruitment process will go through a thorough check-ins. It will not be like the first process, because the first thing we need to know is that the governor already identified the problem. So when you identify a problem, you know how to solve the problem. So the governor have identified the problem. So I know with this identification of the problem, the same process will not repeat itself. They are going to, this new recruitment is going to go through a thorough checking, so that history will not keep repeating itself, so that the new teacher coming in will not be at the same level with the old ones. So they already identified the problem, so they can solve it in the right way and the right direction. So bringing new a set of teachers is the best thing. Because we cannot just leave the school continues. We cannot leave the class empty without the teacher being in class to teach the student. So a new set of teachers, and the governor also said the first teachers that fail the competence test can also come and apply for this new process. If they can step up, maybe they can read and do some things to get their jobs back. But I think the governor also needs to assist them in one way or the other. Maybe organizing a teaching class for them, something to help them also. Because I don't think we should just sack all these numbers of teachers. It's very bad for the unemployment rate keep increasing day in, day out. But bringing new set of teachers is very okay, because the governor already identified the problem, so they can solve it in the right direction.
All right, well, I'll come back to you also in just a minute, but then let's welcome Olumiwa, who joins us from Trinity. Olumiwa, good, well, I don't even know, I think it's good morning in Trinity.
With you guys again.
Very well. So yeah, a lot of what has gone under the bridge before you came on board, but then what do you make of this issue at the moment? So first of all, we try to look at the competency, of teachers generally in public schools, and then also secondly fall back on the issue which has raised a lot of debates in recent time, which is the Kaduna issue. But let's begin with that. How justifiable do you think the sack of these teachers that failed a class 4 competency competency tests in Kaduna?
Well, I think that we should look at the issue from a more general perspective and not focus on Kaduna State. You look at the Nigerian Federation, the 36-state structure, and then you look at the arms of government that we have, the federal, the state, and the local. And you look at under what session the educational responsibilities fall in our constitution. It falls between the exclusive and the concurrent list. That means it is the joint responsibility of both the federal government and the state government to make sure that Nigerians get educated. Interestingly, the UN standards recommends that at least 26% of your national budget on a yearly basis should be devoted towards education. That has never happened in the history of Nigeria before. It's never happened before. So you would expect that when you have a government as a collective now, the Nigerian state, across board, that doesn't that isn't interested in spending 26% of its national budget on education, you cannot get good results. So the problem for me isn't limited to Kaduna State. The problem started from the scratch, started from how our leaders perceive education. And there's one thing we seem to be missing. The Nigerian Constitution, we had argued over this severally. The Nigerian Constitution is so seriously defective. Defective in the sense that for you to aspire to the national office in Nigeria, all you need is just a secondary education. It isn't a pass. It isn't 5 credits pass in secondary school. It just says, show evidence that you attend or you have attended secondary school, and then you're eligible to contest for the highest office. So the designers of our constitution, the framers of our constitution themselves, have lowered the standard in such a way that it's going to be difficult for people to be inspired to want to do anything different. So when you have a system that deliberately encourages people to have the least set of qualification to aspire up to the highest office in the land, you're not going to get the best, and that's where we're getting it wrong. If, for example, our constitution had stipulated that the minimum requirements for you to man any office in Nigeria, whether it be a councillor or whatever you want to be, from councillorship to presidency, is a first degree, I'm tempted to believe that things will not be the way it is. But because you just don't have to pass, you only need to show evidence, nobody really cares. So for me, I think that's where the problem starts from. So the federal government, which is in charge of the universal basic education, keeps making us believe that every year, millions and millions of naira goes to UBEC, but we hardly see the results. What we see instead are classrooms, intervention projects. So we are treating the symptoms and not the disease itself at the federal level. And then you bring it down to the state level. Each state governor over the years competes to build infrastructures. They build classrooms, supply chairs, but they don't do capacity training. There's no capacity development. What is the essence of you building classrooms when you have not built those who will teach in those classrooms? And I think that's where we should begin to focus on as a state. And then back to Kaduna State. Kaduna State is supposed to be, in quotes, one of the most educationally advantaged in the whole of the North, given its prime position in the place of things in Nigeria. I mean, it's always been at the forefront of everything, and it's very centrally located. So if you could have that quantum of people fail a test as simple as a primary 4 test, then it tells you that it isn't just Kaduna State that is in trouble. The whole of northern Nigeria, and by extension, the whole of the Nigerian Federation is in trouble. I've met with so many wonderful friends from the North. we have fantastic, great minds amongst them. They are amongst the most intelligent people, and a number of them are very educated. So it isn't just a northern thing. It's a national problem that hasn't been addressed over the years. And I listened to the gentleman who spoke earlier, saying that you cannot just sack 20,000 plus teachers because they failed eligibility exams. The government needs to do something about it. And I differ. I take a very different position. You can't sack more than 20,000 people who have failed a test as simple as primary 4. There are 1,001 other Nigerians who are jobless, who need those jobs. So the question of you're going to create unemployment does not arise. When you sack a group of people, you bring in another group of people. Those who are going to be brought in are Nigerians. They are not Togolese. They are not Beninois. So that question of you creating unemployment doesn't arise. So having settled that, what is the way forward in Kaduna State? And I think the governor has done the right thing. I do not believe that a number of those teachers in court, a number of those scripts I saw, which apparently or presumably were answered by those teachers, I don't believe they can be redeemed. I think a number of those cases are beyond redemption. And I would not be a governor of a state as forward thinking as Kaduna and have those same sets of people teaching the future leaders of Nigeria in classrooms. I don't think they are worthy of the office they occupy. And I think it's in the best interest of the future of Nigeria as a country and the future of Kaduna State to lay them off. Now, what do you do when you lay them off? Or how do you lay off 20,000 people and you expect your educational system to stand? Of course, the government cannot lay off 20,000 people at once. The government has said in the first instance, we'll lay off people who fail to score 60%. So those who score between 0 to 59% will be laid off. And I think that's a good start point. And then you can begin to retrain those who scored 60% and above. While you are retraining those who scored 60% and above, you can then look at the systemic problems that is really bedeviling the educational system in Kaduna State. And I hope other states in Nigeria would emulate Kaduna State and set up competency tests across board, across the civil service, starting from the primary school, as the governor of Kaduna State had done, so that we can really address this issue once and for all. And not until we begin to do that, not until we accept the fact that our problem is not just Kaduna State, the problem with education in Nigeria is a federal problem. It's a government problem. Until we address that, I'm unsure we're going to be able to make any meaningful impact. But I wholeheartedly support what has happened in Kaduna. I think it's a shame of a nation that a state as forward as Kaduna, as progressive as Kaduna, you have teachers who have been teaching pupils in schools who couldn't do exams as simple as primary 4 examinations. I'd seen so many worst cases in my life. None has come close to what I saw in Kaduna State. And I must say, on a final note, it isn't just enough for us to condemn the teachers in Kaduna. It's also important for us to ask the right questions. Over the years in the history of Kaduna's existence, have we had teachers being retrained? How much of Kaduna State's budget goes into teacher retraining? How much of the budget goes into capacity development? These are the right questions we should ask. There is a very high possibility that these teachers had never been trained before. And if they had been trained, we need to see evidences to back that up. So we cannot just sit down in one corner and blame teachers who have failed. Yes, there is no excuse for failure. But what has been done, or what is being done to help them reposition their objectives and their teaching expertise over the years? Have we had that? These are the questions we should also be asking those in authority.
All right. Okay, that was quite a lengthy one, and I noticed that Adam was taking some notes. I think he wants to respond to some of the things you said. Adam, do you have a response to some of the things Olumiwa said?
Absolutely. So let me kind of start by saying this. Government is not the answer to education. If government is the answer to education, look at Finland. Finland is one of the best country in the world when it comes to education. They have one of the best teacher programs, just everything from teacher training to the building itself to the way the students are taught. But guess what's happening to Finland? The most educated Finnish are living in Finland. You know why? Because of too much government is causing the other sectors in the economy not really reaching its potential. So that's one thing I want to go back and kind of start. I respect Olumuyiwa and Habib, but government is not the answer to education. In fact, government is not the answer to anything. Apart from protecting our freedoms. What is freedom? You are free to live your life. You are free to own property. And you are free to your labor, to what you work for. That's what government is supposed to do. That is the job of government, Victor. The job of government is to protect us to live life. And then you and I, as neighbors, we can decide if we want to collaboratively educate our children, build our roads, and so on and so forth. So that's the perspective that I want our listeners to view this thing. We keep government out of our lives rather than just protecting us. And then we can decide what to do, literally. We can decide what to do. What this means is the resources is in our hands. So oil is no longer in the hands of government. If Victor finds oil, if anyone finds oil in their land, it's their own. Anything, gold, name it. Your business is your own. The labor, your labor, if you work, your money should come to you, all of it, except those that will collaboratively pay to government to protect us. So that is really important, Victor. So what this means is, who is responsible for education then? Us. The key idea to people owning up to what affects them, Victor, is motive. It's called incentive. Now, Victor, let me ask you, this is really important. I want people to understand the concept of incentive and why that affects if everything is done good or bad, including education. I've mentioned this earlier, Victor, but it is important again. I'm going to mention it again. In order for you to control anything, it doesn't matter, be it education, be it anything, you have to do two things. You have to be able to pay. You are the one paying for it. Two, you can hire and fire the person you are hiring to do that thing for. This is completely absent in the Nigerian polity because of the 1999 Constitution. We literally wait for government to do everything. Everything, Victor. We're not in charge. How can anything be corrected while in charge? And that is the same thing. That's why I mentioned Finland. The Finnish have one of the best education, but they have too much government in their lives. They are living right now. They are living their country. So even if government do finally get education right, they are going to screw up some other place. So that's really important to know. So let me go back to incentive. Like I said, if Victor and I, so the responsibility is on me and is on you. If we decide we want to collaboratively fund education, we'll come together as a community, not as a state. No. The education is my responsibility. So you and I, Victor and Habib and Olumuyiwa, will come together and say, okay, we need to pay, we need to tax ourselves to build school, to hire teachers, and to decide what we need to teach our children. Right now, the Federal Ministry of Education decides what our children learn. It's wrong. It's wrong, Victor. A parent should decide what they teach their children. But as long as what they are teaching them, is not something that will violate someone's rights. So I can't teach my children to go and hurt somebody else.
So let me just come in here for a bit. Speaking of having us abandon the government or set the government free from all of its responsibilities and take these responsibilities. First of all, I'll begin to think what system, what kind of government would we run? And don't you think that will be chaotic? Because there would be a need for people to reach a consensus as to what should be done at a particular time?
That's a good question, Victor. So what happens if we don't have government in our lives? What happens if you and I are deciding? So Victor, let me ask you right now. Does government...
Let's say we look at a country like Nigeria that has over 150 million people, you know, and it means everyone has to come together to make that decision on what should be done, on what kind of curriculum should be used in schools, on where schools should be located, and the likes. Don't you think it will be chaotic?
Absolutely no. If there is, the United States would have been chaotic. When the framers of the United States Constitution, when they formed the country, there is no education in their federal constitution, nothing, zero, Victor. And anything that in the United Constitution, anything that is not assigned to the federal government is left to the people to decide. So there will absolutely not be chaos. Okay, let me tell you, right now, what you do in your house is not concerned, technically it's not concern of the government, Victor. You go into your room, you arrange your room the way you want, you train your children the way you want, if you do have one in the future, or you've seen someone that does that. Is there chaos? Is there chaos in our house? My parents trained me. They gave me their values, their beliefs. Is there chaos in my life? Is there chaos in my neighbor's life? No. So it is absolutely, we need to get out of this. I don't blame Nigerians. We have grown up, everything is the government. So we believe that if there's no government, things will be chaos. No, absolutely not. Victor, if you go back to how my parents and my grandparents educated, they educated in the village. No formal education, but Islamic education. How do you think Islamic education is provided? I swear to God, Victor, when I went to my mother's village when I was little, you will find Islamic school, Islamia, Makarantang Allo, almost in every corner, provided zero, no government involvement. And people, the teachers, and just the general atmosphere determines what the students to teach, the teachers will teach. And this will get excellent education, highly educated. So it is important to know that there won't be chaos. And so that is one. And if, like I said, I'm not in favor of forcing people, even when we have the right. This is important. Once I say that, I will allow for person. I'm not in favor of public education, zero, Victor. Because public education, once you allow government to run anything, first of all, government run, if you give government anything, if that's something costs 10 naira, government will do it at 20 naira. So that is wasting of resources. So that is one. Two, because no one knows what is in your heart better than you. You should do that. But if you allow somebody to do it, it's inefficient because that person will not know what is in your heart. Plus, if someone is representing you and I, if I want to, you want Akpu, they have to choose something. They can't go for both. So that's how government operates. It's really highly inefficient. So that is why education needs to come to us. And then actually, we should not, even in our communities, we should not try to force people to form a little tiny government to do education. Let the private market allow government. And that in conjunction with everything I've mentioned, government, out of our lives, we decide, even central banking. Anyway, so there won't be chaos.
Okay, let me move on. I'm trying to say something all along. Okay.
Yes, very quickly. Well, if we take Adamu's suggestion, we'll be living in an Obesian state of nature, and life will be short, brutish, and nasty. I had the opportunity to travel around the world, and I'd never seen anywhere in the whole world where the government is 100% not 100% out of education. It is the responsibility of every responsible government to educate its citizens. The government may not 100% be involved in terms of financing education, but I assure you, the government plays a regulatory role in most advanced democracies. And I want to push the debate to Finland. Even in Finland, Finland has some of the best universities in the world. The government funds education, and that's why folks like us and like Adamu can go to Finland and get scholarships. I live in a country that is just about 5 million people. The government supports education so massively. What the government does not do is to impose its authority on those pupils or on those students in terms of what courses that each university or each secondary school or each institution would run. There is some level of independence for the operators to decide their syllabuses, their working conditions, but the government plays a regulatory role. Having said that, we bring back this discourse to Nigeria so that we don't lose track. Nigeria is a country of at least 180 million people. Extremely rich country in terms of naira and kobo, but poor in terms of ideas and productivity. And the reason is simple. I said earlier that our problem isn't just the government. Our problem has to do with our constitution. The concept of we, the people of Nigeria, which you have in the first preamble, is something we should debate again. We need to re-debate it, because there was no point in time when Nigerians met and decided that we're going to have this constitution that we all seem to be following. And for that constitution to remain the way it is now, we will not get it right educationally, unless it is there in our constitution that the government needs to hands off education. That's when we can tow the part of Adam. Now let's go back to Kaduna State or to Nigeria as a whole. Universal basic education is a fundamental right. You cannot take it away from the people. And I will not be here on this program and accept the fact that the citizens or the people can pay taxes, but the government does not have any responsibility. I totally disagree. If universal basic education is a fundamental right, then it is the responsibility of government to educate its people. It is the responsibility of government to provide those facilities, at least at that level. And that's the point we are making here. We're talking about UBEC, universal basic education now. The government has a responsibility to support the system. And supporting the system means you provide infrastructure. Providing infrastructure entails provide the avenues for conducive learning and provide the people who will teach in these classrooms and the materials that will be used in teaching. It is only until government provides all that in truthfulness and with all sincerity, and the handlers of our educational system have failed to utilize those resources very well, that we can begin to absolve the government of any blame. So I am not going to absolve the government. The blame is at the doorstep of the government to begin with. And I say this with all authority. The Nigerian government has never for once moved near providing 26% of our net national budget towards education. We have never had 15% in our history, and Nigeria is 57 years old. You cannot cook rice and expect pounded yam. It doesn't work that way. In New Zealand, where I have been fortunate to be over the last few years, you need to see what happens when kids go to school, the excitement. The fact that they don't spend so many hours learning, they spend more time recreating. And they spend little time learning. And the syllabuses or their syllabuses are trained to recognize their special needs. And that's because the regulator, which is the government, allowed that kind of independence. We don't have that in Nigeria. But we cannot get to that point without us addressing the fundamentals. Go to all our public schools in the 7th and the 4th local government. It's an eyesore. And you ask yourself whether this is a country that is so rich in crude oil, yet our pupils cannot even afford to study under the best conditions. So how do you absolve government from such blames? So I reckon that the government has not played its part. But whether the government plays its part or not, we need to understand one thing. It's one thing for the government to play its part. It's another thing for those who have been saddled with responsibility of ensuring that the system functions to support that system. I reckon that it is not 100% a government thing in terms of turning the tide, but we cannot absolve them from this blame. And the earlier the government recognizes that, the better it becomes for the citizenry. Otherwise, we're just going to be dripping ourselves.
All right, very well. Let's see how it'll play out in the nearest future. But let me come back to you. I mean, you have been quiet for a while now. Looking at the debates, I'm aware the government should play that role of providing funds and regulation or inspectorate services, to the education system. If you are to come in here, what role or how would you prefer to see the government coming in terms of the education system generally, because Muiwa tried to give us a general perspective. He went from the Constitution, on how the bodies that were set up by the Constitution of the government, that's the UBEC, Universal Basic Education Commission, how they have also been, the role they have also been playing. But let's just get to hear from you in terms of government intervention in the case of education in the country.
Oh, I totally agree with Mr. Muiwa, but yeah, we have gotten it wrong from the start. But we should not forget the fact that if there is provision for these certain things, if we utilize it very well, we are going to achieve results with it. We do not need to have much money before we can utilize the little we have. If we can manage the little we have very well, we will achieve positive results with it. I do not agree with Mr. Adamu saying we should leave government out of our educational system, because as a citizen, we all pay our taxes. So it is the duty of the government to provide for its citizens. If we pay our taxes, should be, and there's provision for all these things. So why can't we use it for what it is meant for? So I don't think we should remove the government hand from this thing. Government have to be engaged. Government have to be involved. Country government keep scholarship for people, for their students. I'm in Malaysia here. Every student in Malaysia pay government fund their education, and at the end of the day, after their graduation, when they start working, they refund maybe 50% of what government have used in making them educated. So our government should be involved. So, but there must be structure. We must sit down again and structuralize our educational system. The structure is wrong in the first place. So we must rearrange and reorganize everything from the beginning again. Yes, with what Mr. Muiwa said about the qualification of the president, that from that also, looking at it, the highest position in Nigeria, just SSCE, is very bad for us. So we must sit down again and lay down a new set of structure, a new set of rules. Okay, this system, this is what we want to have for our educational system. The parents should come on board. The private sector should come on board. The government should come on board. We already have high educational personnel in Nigeria. Many people are highly educated. These people need to come in. How we can help these people? And I think Mr. Muiwa missed one of my points. I did not say the government should keep the teacher. I already say yes, the government have identified the problem. Sacking them is the best thing. We cannot keep them in class. Yes, that's essential. But we should help them in their little way, because in that position they are today, they also pass through the same failed system. That's why they are able to find themselves in that position today. So we should be able to help them to grow back, because if we leave them that these people are not useful for us, they can turn out to be something dangerous and something bad for the country and Kaduna State as a whole. And this thing should pass across board, not only Kaduna State, every state in Nigeria. The whole Nigeria have to sit down again. Our educational system has to be standard. And I read a trend by the former Minister of Education, Mrs. Ebio Ezekusi. Time in 2006, there is a inspection agency or forum like that. Like she called the name ORAS, Operation Reach All Secondary Schools and Operation Reach All Primary Schools. All this that they have to call on board all the former teachers, all the former professors, that these people set a plan. Okay, we must reach to every secondary school, look at the teachers, look at the reform we can bring in to develop the teachers, the schools as a whole. But this reform only lasted for just 4 months. So this structure, our structure has been going from inception. We have to sit down again. If citizens are paying their taxes, it's government to also help use the money in the right direction. Our budget for education is very small. We only focus on others. Even if we budget for education, if it is very small, the implementation of our budget is very low, year in, year out. Now the 2018 budget proposal has been transferred to the Senate, but the 2017 budget implementation is very low. Even we have not reached up to 50% of it. So where are we heading to if we budget for something and we are not implementing it fully? We can't get anywhere from it. So we have to implement more, spend more to achieve. Our educational system before, we all know from the history that even foreigners came to Nigeria to study. But now, reverse is the case. We are the one going out, leaving Nigeria to study from in another country. Nobody wants to study in Nigeria again because the system is very bad. The system is bullshitting day in, day out. Our teachers, even the teachers are not willing to teach. There's not that zeal in teachers when you are in school. There's always that zeal, the motivation from the teachers to carry you along. You see in Nigeria, teachers coming with food stuff, things to sell to the students in schools. It's not helping. We can't get anywhere from that. Must play its role. And if the government plays its role, the people in charge must also ensure that what the government is funding, what the government is providing the results we are aiming. The government must not be left out. It's possible for us to let government out of them. It's not right. The government must be engaged. The government must set the plan because that's why we bring them in. That we select you guys as our leader. We are putting you in this position to help us plan, to help us implementation, to help us develop our country. So they must be able to the office they're swearing oath, they must be able to do it for us because that's why we selected them. That's why we elected them. So they must be engage us with it. So I don't think we should let the government out of it.
All right, so we're just about to wrap this up now. Well, let me come to you now in terms of the say contribution of the private sector. How do you see the private sector coming in? Because already we have private schools on one side, but still, you know, so sorry, let me just comment. I mean, we have the private sector. When I talk about private sector, I'm talking about companies who perhaps might organize competitions, and when it comes to school competitions or quiz competitions, we see the star prize might not even go more than 100,000. Meanwhile, you have other private organizations organizing competitions, and then the winner goes home with 5 million naira, which that competition might not be necessarily educative. Do you think the private sector needs to do more in that regard? Just to wrap it up now.
Well, look, as I had mentioned earlier, I refuse to accept that the Nigerian government at all levels, state, federal, state, and local, cannot adequately fund primary school education. That's the starting point. If you have a government that cannot sufficiently fund primary school education, look, it's like you don't have a foundation. You're never going to be able to build any superstructure. The substructure is not there, and that's all we're talking about. Already, the private sector is heavily involved in Nigeria's education system. You got private universities, lots of them, private secondary schools, lots of them, nursery and primary school, lots of them. But because these five fingers are not equal, all Nigerians cannot afford to send their children to private nursery and primary schools, to private secondary school, to private universities. What then will be the responsibility of the government that collects all these returns? The government that makes all these monies from crude oil, government that makes all these monies from taxes, the government that makes all this money from import duties, the government that makes money from several other areas that we haven't even factored into the equation. What will be the responsibility of the Nigerian government, for God's sake, if you cannot have a fully functional primary education for your citizens? I don't think we should even go into what reward exists in terms of those who go to university, excel, come out with first class, and what reward exists for those who go into sing competitions or fashion parades or beauty pageants. We should look at the basis of government. The basic responsibility of government is to educate its people at least up to secondary school level. And I've brought down the barrier. I've brought down the yardstick a little bit. I'm saying the Nigerian government across board has the capacity to fully fund primary school education. It is the height of irresponsibility on their part. It is the height of indiscipline on the part of our leaderships that we have not had a government or previous governments that can successfully do that. And I think we should tackle that as citizens. And this is where I think civil society organizations should come into being. Since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, the civil society has been becoming less and less active. We need to continue to push these responsibilities to the government, and we need to hold our leaders to account. It is not just enough for us to accept what the government is giving. It is also important for us to demand that the government fixes our educational system, starting from primary school. And that's the point I want to depart from. And that's the point I want to rest my case. The Nigerian government, in closing, has the capacity across board to fix our public education system, at least from the primary to the secondary school level. If they cannot do that, all of them in government, from the presidency down to the last 774th councillor, should be ashamed of themselves, should be ashamed of their existence, should be ashamed of the offices they occupy. Unfortunately, our leaders are not ashamed of themselves. And that's why we don't seem to get things right. And the followership also is so passive, unfortunately too. And it's psychological. Nigerians are almost giving up on themselves. There's a thin line between giving up and continue to believe that things will get better. And that's the point we are now. So this government across board needs to fix it. If they can't fix it, then none of them should be ashamed of sitting on the national cake that belongs to around 80 million plus one Nigerians. And it's a pathetic shame, if you ask me.
All right, thank you very much, Olumiwa. You joined us from Dunedin in New Zealand. Well, Adam, let's also get your own closing statement in relation to the participation or contribution of the private sector in Nigeria's education.
There's a lot that has been mentioned. I always wish there is time for this kind of thing. Because until we get the foundation right, Victor, we will continue to come in cycles, literally. I just mentioned Finland with one of the best educational system, and their most educated people are leaving the country. And right now, all our focus is what government should do, There is nothing, whenever you take away responsibility from yourself and give it to someone, you are in this, you basically really put yourself in corner. We take this responsibility and give it to someone else while we just wait. This is something that Nigerians need to understand. That system never works. It doesn't matter even if the government gets it right. That system just never works, Victor. Olumiwa has mentioned about how these people should be ashamed. This is what is going to continue to happen, Victor. Victor, you have been in this world for a little bit, just like I am. What was the last time you hear people not complaining about government? For nothing, that's it's always. But when it is your responsibility, you don't complain. Education is the responsibility of you and me, not government. We need to get that right. If you tell me that responsibility of education is government, this is what you are telling me. That you are okay, you should bring your child to me, and it's okay for me to teach your child anything I like. Victor, would you agree with that? So that is one, too. You are also saying that it's okay if I can educate my children with 10 naira, it's okay for government to educate my child with 20 naira. But that's the fact. Anything that you give government to do, it does it at least twice the cost. So we are accepting failure at the beginning already. Government is not the answer. As far as private sector is concerned, which falls back right into my alley, what I'm saying. You are a private person on your own right. I'm a private person on my own right. It is our own responsibility. The United States that Olumiwa has been mentioning advanced countries. When they formed this country, there's no education in their constitution, zero. Public education from which we copied from them, from advanced countries, started in the United States not long ago. In many parts of the states. Education was completely done by people. You and I come together, we educate. So the solution, Victor,
All right,
until
quickly.
we give it to ourselves, until we give responsibility to ourselves, Victor, we'll be going back in cycle and complaining for someone else's failure while we sit down watching. That's not the way to do things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adamu. You joined us from the United States. But also, let's also get to hear from Habib before we finally close this conversation. Habib, looking at the private sector's contribution, what do you think, or how do you think they can come in?
Yeah, I think firstly, education is the responsibility of the individual to get education, to determine if he or she wants to get education himself. But talking about the private sector, I think the private sector needs to come in, because to move a country, to develop a country, the private sector have an important role to play. Because talking about the private sector, we have educated people of high ranking that have traveled all over the world. They know how the system works. We need them to come in to help our educational system. Yes, we have gotten it wrong from the start. It is not late to start. We can start again from the scratch and set up a new standard for our education system. Variables of people at the world, different ranks of education, BSc, master, professor. This thing is the one helping them in their businesses, making their businesses go. New ideas. They need to come in, bring these ideas, sit with the governor, sit with the government that, oh, this is what we need for us to develop our education. This a new generation, we have to set their standard. If we got our education wrong for this new generation, Nigeria can never get it right, because education is very important. Education is very important because the world is getting more advanced day by day. New set of technology is coming in, and with all this thing is not just coming in learning. It's not rocket science. It's true education. It's what you said from your basic education that you keep developing to your highest educational level, be it university level. So private sector needs to come in. They need to play an important role. It's not necessary for them to fund or to give money to the individual that achieve. They should make it like a circular. Okay, we're supporting the government with this amount. We are bringing this new idea for the government. Bringing new proposal. Oh, government, we are proposing this to you, and we are going to be counter-funding it. That okay, we are bringing this budget for you. You can support us with this. This is a new step. Education is not just about going to classroom, going to schools. That seminars, classes, 6-month, 3-month classes. It's not only about going to classroom, facing a lecturer that we get educated. They can set a lot of workshops, technical school that can help us a lot. So we need to, private sector needs to come in these places. They need to bring in people to help our educational system. I think with this, we can achieve what we want for our educational system. And the government will also keep funding and keep supporting educational system. They cannot be left out of this, because it's going to go back to them also in the future.
All right, thank you very much. My baby joined us from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, but then we have to wrap the conversation here on this note. But then thanks once again for joining us, and it's a Google Plus Hangout for channel.
Thank you.